Good morning, News Talk 1330 WLBB. Adam Uglum here in the Community Voice Chair, taking your phone calls today on whatever it is we decide to talk about. It's kind of a surprise. Sort of. Lately, I've been kind of figuring out what to talk about right before the program. I do prepare. There are things that I follow, so there's a little organization, but I kind of like to do things off the cuff lately for some reason. But today, if you'd like to call in and comment, I can provoke you with tickets to Carrollton High School's Performing Arts program presenting Hairspray this weekend. I've got tickets for the Saturday, May 12th showing at 7 p.m. It will be... the program is on Friday and Saturday at 7 p.m., but I have tickets for Saturday at 7 p.m. in the Mabry Center for the Arts at Carrollton High School. Again, that's directed by Brenda Sue Holcomb. Tickets are normally $10, but I've got a whole stack here to any caller who'd like to call in and make a comment sometime during the program. I mean, don't call early and just say, I want free tickets. I do want you to call in and make a comment. So this is what these are for. I do suppose I could be mean and just say, sorry, you don't have anything to add to the conversation, so no tickets for you. But that'd be kind of mean, wouldn't it? I don't think you guys have seen my mean side. You might today. Who knows? Believe me or not, in all my studies of political science, I really do think that the 2012 election is more important than any election in the history of the United States. I don't think one has been more pivotal since probably 1860, I would have to guess. And call it hyperbole, call it whatever you want to, but if President Barack Obama is reelected, the United States will never be the same. It may never be the same as it is. Repealing Obamacare may be an impossible task. It really may be. Getting rid of Social Security, solving Social Security problems, solving the problems that Medicaid and Medicare have, may be a political impossibility. We're stuck with them. We got them. The closest thing that we human beings can get to eternal life is a government program. That's the only thing that just seems to never go away. Once you have them, and they are there forever. The overwhelming majority of Americans are disinterested in politics. I don't think anyone understands, very few people at least, understand that Obama's first term was dedicated to putting in place all of the things he wants to really do in his second term. If you think the guy is radical now, remember, folks, this is his first term in office. All bars are removed, all holds, all stops go out in the second term. He's got nothing to lose if he gets reelected. And I think he will get reelected. I think that's beyond a shadow of a doubt at this point. He's going to get reelected. What that means for us, I'm not real sure yet, other than if it's worse than what's going on now, I think he's setting up a very dangerous precedent. And I think it's this bulldozing path he may go on in his second term is indicated by the way he's campaigning right now, to be perfectly honest. I think the fact that he ignores the plight of incumbent or other Democratic Party office holders, I don't think he cares. I don't think he cares what Congress looks like after this year, so long as he gets reelected. I think he's really setting himself up that he doesn't need Congress. And I think the most significant accomplishment of his first term is the very thing of making Congress irrelevant. Under the blind, loyal leadership of Harry Reid and Nancy Pelosi, the Democrats have succeeded in creating an imperial and potentially dictatorial presidency. I mean, the president has said, look, I'll do this without Congress. He'll do everything in his power to do what he thinks should be done without Congress. He's had several Freudian slips about what he feels about Congress. During the first 2 years of the Obama administration, Democrats overwhelmingly controlled both houses of Congress, and the media was in an Obama-worshipping stupor. Laws were passed and actions taken which transferred large portions of power to the executive branch. The birth of multi-thousand-page laws was not an aberration. This was a tactic adopted for the very purpose that these laws would create bureaucracy controlled by the executive branch so that presidential appointees and other members of the executive branch would have sole discretion in interpreting vaguely written laws and enforcing thousands of pages of regulations. You know, we only think we've got 3 branches of government, but we really have 4, and 5 if you include the media. But the 4th and very clear branch of government is the bureaucracy, and it's only grown and grown and grown and grown and grown and grown. Just think about it. There are 2,700 pages in the Obamacare legislation. Excuse me, the Affordable Health Care Act, as I'm supposed to refer to it. There are more than 2,500 references to the Secretary of Health and Human Services. That's almost 1 per page. There are more than 700 instances when he or she is instructed that they shall do something, and there are more than 200 times when they may take at their sole discretion some form of regulatory action. On 139 occasions, the law mentions that the Secretary determines. In essence, one person appointed by and reporting to the President will be in charge of the health care of 310 million Americans once Obamacare is fully operational in 2014. Isn't it kind of interesting that the Obamacare legislation, all of the kind of feel-good stuff about leaving your kids on your insurance till you're 26 and not being denied for pre-existing conditions, all that feel-good, unicorn and rainbows stuff is in there already. It's already there. It's good to go. But all the serious stuff is 2014. Some of it 2013. There are 2,319 pages in the Dodd-Frank Financial Reform Act, which confers nearly unlimited power on various agencies to control by fiat our financial, banking, and investment sectors. The bill also creates new agencies such as the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, not subject to any congressional oversight. This overall process was repeated numerous times with other legislation, all with the intent of granting unfettered powers to the executive branch. President Obama is right, ladies and gentlemen. He doesn't need Congress. Not anymore. Not if we grow the bureaucracy like we're growing it, as we have in the last few decades. And Bush is guilty of this too. As much as we refer to FDR's Great Depression, it was very much Hoover's Great Depression as well. FDR picked up a lot of Hoover's policies and expanded upon them, and only made things worse. It was a Hoover-Roosevelt depression, much like this is a Bush-Obama recession. And what's interesting to me is that if you look at various examples, you can look at government spending and the instances of recessions. When you take so much out of the private sector and waste it, or use it less effectively, less efficiently, that's one of the driving forces in recessions. Malinvestment, as it's called by Friedrich Hayek, the great Austrian economist. But I think what's scary most about this year is that President Obama knows that after his re-election, a Republican-controlled House and Senate won't be able to enact any legislation to roll back the power previously granted to the executive branch or usurped by them. His veto will not be overridden, as there will always be at least 145 Democratic members of the House or 34 in the Senate in agreement with or intimidated by an administration more than willing to use his Chicago-style politics. I think this stalemate between the executive and legislative branch is really what is going to ensure the success of Barack Obama, which success of Barack Obama means destruction of the United States, at least as we know it. We'll still be here, that's for sure. We'll still be better than any other country on the face of the earth. That is absolutely clear. But we'll be tarnished. That is also absolutely clear. Stay tuned after the break. Please feel free to call in and comment. We'll get into the nuts and bolts. Oh yeah, and there's free hairspray tickets. I forgot about that already. Saturday, May 12th. This Saturday, 7 o'clock, the Mabry Center for the Arts. Tickets normally $10. I've got more than I can count. If you'd like to call in, the number 678-601-8255. Again, that number is 678-601-TALK. Back after the break. Welcome back. News Talk 1330. Again, the telephone number 678-601-TALK. If you'd like to call in, I'll be happy to write your name down and give you a couple of tickets. You can come pick them up anytime that we are here, usually until 9:30, 10 o'clock in the morning. Someone will be here to give you your tickets. But again, the number 678-601-TALK. If you'd like to call in and make a comment at any point during the program. Now, it is time for the nuts and bolts portion of the radio program, and that means we get into the hard data to prove why our country is in trouble. Well, we've all heard, I think, that President Obama has run up more debt, or at least presided over more debt acquirement than Bush ran up in his 2 terms in office. So the guy's only been in there 3 years. 3 years. 3 years and, 4 months? Not quite. So let's check that out. On Inauguration Day in 2001, President Bush inherited a debt of $5.7 trillion from Democratic President Bill Clinton. The data here is directly from the Treasury Department's webpage. Again, $5.7 trillion in 2001. By 2009, Inauguration Day for President Barack Obama, that debt stood at almost exactly $5 trillion higher, $4.9 trillion higher at $10.626 trillion. The debt held by the public after 8 years of President Bush was $6.3 trillion. Intra-governmental holdings were $4.3 trillion. The scary bit is coming up next. So even though 8 years later, Obama inherited a debt of $10.6 trillion, to make this clear, under Bush, the debt of the federal government went up by $4.9 trillion. That record was equaled under Obama by March 15th. That's 2 months ago. Those numbers don't really tell the full story about the national debt, because the above figures are for the gross debt. And that debt is the one that folks should worry about, is the debt held by the public. The hard debt is the debt that we really owe. So let's compare that growth of the hard debt under Bush and Obama. The Treasury webpage used for this information doesn't have the hard debt for 2001, but that doesn't really matter. So let's take the lowest hard debt number for Bush's first year, which will make Obama look less bad, we'll say. The number is the debt held by the public on September 30th, 2001, the end of fiscal year 2001, the last year with a surplus. The hard debt on that day was $3.3 trillion and was $6.3 trillion at the end of Bush's presidency. So Bush racked up just shy of $3 trillion in hard debt under 8 years. President Obama has racked up $4.5 trillion of hard debt by March 15th of this year. He's racked up 50% more hard debt in 3/8 the time. Half the time, we'll call it, just to be nice. He's racked up debt 50% faster in less than half the time. It took the same time, less than 3 years and 2 months, surpassed his hard debt by a factor of 1.5. Nevertheless, that number is always the real debt, and it's always been that way, but it's too complicated to explain it any other way normally. I mean, it doesn't make a good news story when something's too complicated like that. So maybe we should look back a little bit. President Eisenhower balanced the budget, as did 3 GOP presidents of the 1920s, which includes President Hoover. So Dean's statement here is not false. This statement, where Howard Dean says, I think we ought to get spending down to where Bill Clinton had it and put taxes back up to where Bill Clinton had it, and then we'd have a balanced budget and a big surplus, just like Bill Clinton did. The only president since LBJ to balance the budget. Only Democrats balance budgets. Do you know that? That's what Howard Dean says. He says only Democrats balance budgets. Apparently he doesn't study history much because he didn't look at Coolidge or Harding or Hoover. As bad as Hoover was, he did manage to have a couple of balanced budgets. I mean, Dean's statement's not only false, it's plain ignorant. I'm not sure we should blame him, though, for that. One of the strengths here is that we know what the truth is. One of the big differences is that we know what the truth really is that in the 1990s, we didn't have balanced budgets because President Clinton had high taxes. We didn't have balanced budgets because Bill Clinton put spending down. We had balanced budgets because the government was broken in the 1990s. It was tooth and nail to get anything passed in the 1990s with a Republican Congress and a Democratic president. And a slim majority of Republicans in Congress, mind you. Tooth and nail. What happened was his spending by the government fell to 17.5% of gross domestic product. Right now, it's closer to 24%, ladies and gentlemen. Remember, tax revenue as a percentage of gross domestic product has always been consistently very flat, right around 19 or 20%. Getting that below that 19% is where you get surpluses. You don't get it from raising taxes. You get it from increasing tax revenue as a percentage of GDP. And the only times we've ever seen that number go up significantly is during big economic booms, like in the 1990s and post-World War II and in the 1920s. The income tax was fairly new in the 1920s. Prior to the 1920s, the tax structure in the United States was very much different. We didn't extract nearly as much money out of the private sector as we do now. I mean, can you imagine a government that lasted for 140 years probably with no income tax? Isn't that crazy? Why can't we do that today? I just don't understand it. And what's so funny is that it's always sold as something that it's not going to be. Because when it was sold to the American people originally, I mean, a few thousand people paid this tax. It was a tax specifically for these extremely rich people. It was going to be 3% tax. That's all it is. Well, don't worry. We'll repeal the 16th and 17th Amendments. We'll give senators direct elections, which is fantastic for the country. Not. And we'll repeal the legislation that prevents us from taxing income. The 16th Amendment. Thanks, Woodrow Wilson. Much appreciated. It's that slippery slope. You let the government get in with the income tax. And look, now we all pay income tax. Oops. I thought it was just a rich tax originally. Well, it was. But that's what we have now. So believe your politicians if you want to. But remember the slippery slope, too. We'll be back after this quick break. So only Democrats balance budgets. I'm not buying it. Nope, not buying it. Because presidents are responsible for the budget, not, and therefore the debt. So we must then ascribe to the notion that Clinton's Republican Congress had nothing to do with the surpluses from 1998 through 2001. And not only that, but Democrat Congresses aren't responsible for current trillion-dollar deficits. Pretty slick, if you can get away with it. And you can. Why? Because Americans are stupid. One person, Senator Jeff Sessions, isn't buying this nonsense. One politician, I should say. In Washington Times, April 26, he wrote this. This Sunday marks exactly 3 years since the Democratic majority in the Senate last passed a budget on April 29, 2009. During that time, the federal government has spent $10.4 trillion and added another $4.5 trillion to our total debt. Adopting a budget is not optional. It is required by law under the 1974 Congressional Budget Act. The Senate must move a budget out of the Budget Committee by April 1st of every year and adopt a budget resolution on the floor by April 15th. The House has completed its budget work each of the past 2 years since the GOP attained a majority in that chamber. By contrast, the Democratic Senate is continuing its open defiance of budget law for the third year in a row. It appears likely that President Obama will only have signed one budget in his first term, yet he does not use his bully pulpit to shame his Democratic Senate into doing their duty. Why should he? When Congress is willing to give him a blank check, because we've got no budget, baby. We're just going to raise the debt ceiling anyway. Might as well spend it. You got the bureaucracy under your control. And you can tell it's so obvious. What this guy's being allowed to get away with is scary, to be perfectly honest. And this is legitimate. This is, if you haven't heard about Julia, you should, as much as it may pain you, go to barackobama.com/life-of-Julia and check this out. And I thought these were fake at first. But this one says, under President Obama, and they're, of course, comparing themselves directly to Mitt Romney, and they're misleading. Liberal journalists have said these are misleading. They're so far out there when it comes to demagoguery. I can't believe this is an official campaign thing. So here it says, under President Obama, Julia is enrolled in a Head Start program, which, by the way, is a complete waste of money, has no scientific evidence to back its success, to help get her ready for school. Julia's 3. You can follow Julia through her life. Because of steps President Obama has taken to improve programs like this one, Julia joins thousands of students across the country who will start kindergarten ready to learn and succeed. Because that is a role that is now taken over by the federal government. That's not a responsibility of parents to teach their kids to read before they go to public school. Now, the ad says, under Mitt Romney, the Romney-Ryan budget, where Ryan comes in, I'm not sure. I guess I'm not paying enough attention. But the Romney-Ryan budget could cut programs like Head Start by 20%. So again, he's tying two people together who aren't typically tied together, Romney and Ryan. And again, could cut it by 20%, meaning the program would offer 200,000 fewer slots per year. I'm not sure I've ever seen something more hyperbolic in my entire life. Let's see, 17 years old. Julia takes the SAT and is on track to start her college applications. Her high school is part of the Race to the Top program, a resounding success, implemented by President Obama. Their new college and career-ready standards mean Julia can take classes that she needs to do well. Because we all know in years prior to President Obama, kids just weren't smart enough to go to college because they didn't have the Race to the Top program. However, under Mitt Romney, according to this advertisement, the Romney-Ryan budget would cut funding for public education to pay for tax cuts for millionaires. Seriously, I cannot believe that. I can believe. Why? I can't believe this is real because people buy it. They believe it. Now, before we go, here's a couple of pieces of humor. Under President Obama, Julia is enrolled in a Great Leap program. Same thing. This is just a humor version where seriously, these are the funny ones. She'll learn critical community organizing and obedience skills from qualified union staff screened for felony convictions, readying her for success in the kindergarten phase of her customized 65-year life plan. Under Mitt Romney, though, little Julia will be marched to a Mormon polygamy camp in Utah where Paul Ryan will torture her with boring Republican math mumbo-jumbo. So let's fast forward to high school where, under President Obama, it's prom week and Julia hasn't been asked out yet. But thanks to President Obama's No Shy Girl Left Behind prom initiative, she'll have an attractive date and corsage provided for her by the U.S. Secretary of Dreamboat's George Clooney. Imagine the looks on those mean, stuck-up cheerleaders when Julia arrives with her new hot federal boyfriend and the limo and nice corsage. Though under Mitt Romney, the Romney-Ryan plan would let fundamentalist preachers outlaw dancing in Julia's town, and she would be forced to dance in dangerous side-by-side jeeps. Also, Glee will be canceled by bullies. These are funny. I really like these. Julia needs money for college. Luckily, she lives in a state with unionized teachers. Thanks to President Obama's innovative Madison grants, she can earn up to $10,000 and extra class credit for helping her teachers shut down the state capitol. Earning by learning, and it's fun, too. Though under Mitt Romney, and I'm sure Paul Ryan's involved there, too, unable to afford college, Julia's mind will atrophy and rot, and she'll end up being a pariah in her community, sleeping at an abandoned amusement park. Poor Julia, if only she had President Obama to save her. 678-601-8255 if you'd like to call in for free hairspray tickets. Again, I'm sure it's a fantastic show, as they always are, directed by Brenda Sue Holcomb. Again, I only have tickets for Saturday. I've looked through here. I don't see any Friday tickets. But if you're free Saturday at 7 p.m. and you'd like to see a fantastic show by the very talented performing arts program at the Carrollton High School, please feel free to call in. I've got tickets for you. 678-601-TALK. Hope you enjoyed the program. Man, these Julia things just crack me up. And we should all completely understand why these are here at all. Is because there are people who look at these and say, you know what, they're right. I've told you before, President Obama's speeches over the years getting dumbed down and dumbed down and dumbed down. Why? Because he's catering to his base. It is the uneducated, dumb masses who he's trying to appeal to. And these cartoons exemplify that probably no better than anything else. Because it's all that way. It's all dumbed down. Everything is dumbed down because we are a people who demand it. We are a people who demand the dumbed down version of politics because we don't wake up, pay attention, smell the coffee in the morning.
News Talk 1330 WLBB, Carrollton. News Talk 1330